right, so
This is the next step.
this is the next step.
Step 2.
Step 2.
Take 2.
All right, so once we have it centered, we are going to, well, I just want to remind everyone that keeping our elbows attached is extra important in this step. So if I see you and everyone does this at first, and they're just like out here, I'm going to remind you to put your elbows down, and you'll see why. So to open it up, we use one hand, and we only use one because with this motion, the circular motion, we only have to put pressure on one spot. We took 2 and we were putting pressure in 2 spots. It's not impossible, not like people do, they do it that way, but you're more likely to get things off center if you're pulling in 2 directions. Right, so just use one thumb and go right to the center, and I'm making like this shape, so just a 90-degree angle, and push straight down. Now you kind of have to eyeball it at first. So with whatever you're making, a cup, a bowl, you need to leave enough space on the bottom for a foot, which is like the next step. We flip them over and we carve feet into them, we trim feet into them. So you have to leave like at least, I don't know, maybe a half an inch or so on the bottom to test that out and see, do I have a pen tool? To see like how thick the floor is. I don't think I do have one, got it. This is how you can test. So you kind of just stab it right down the middle, bring your finger down to where the clay is, and then pull it out all together, and I can see that that's how thick the floor is. And that's about what you want.
You're
about a half an
puncturing
inch.
the hole into the clay?
Mhm. And it will close back up.
Oh, okay.
It's a small enough hole that it should close back up. So I've established how deep this needs to go. The next step, and we're just gonna make cylinders. I know it's boring, but if we can master the cylinder, you can make anything. I don't care if it's a bowl this big, it always starts out as a cylinder at first. So we're gonna just make cylinders first, and then we can, like, with time, expand and make more stuff. But a cylinder has a flat base, right? Like this is a cylinder. So we're gonna drag our fingers perpendicular with the wheel head to the right because we're right-handed. So because we're right-handed, we're always gonna be working on the right side of the clay. This is our area. We're not working up here or here, we're right here on the right side. So I'm just gonna drag my finger flat. If you need to stand up and like look, you can do that. You don't look kind of far away. I don't know, but feel free to come up if you need to. I'm just dragging it open, and I'm creating a very flat bottom. Where did my sponge go? And the next step, once we have this opened, we've established like the sort of like the foot of the piece. We need to condense the clay. And so this is why S-cracks happen. S-cracks, the bane of every potter's existence. It happens because the clay particles are not pushed together enough. They're not condensed enough. So to avoid that, every time we open the piece, we're gonna take our sponge. Some people use a wooden rib tool. I prefer a sponge, but give both a try. And I'm kind of like pinching the clay to create like a little ball of, or the sponge to create a little sponge ball on top. And I'm pushing in, and I'm sort of just going right up to the edge of the wall right here. Just putting pressure down. You might want to come see this. I don't know how to explain this verbally. So I'm starting at the outside. I'm pushing into the middle, moving back out.
How hard are you pushing?
Hard enough to make this imprint here. If I was pushing harder, it would be like.
And it's just the bottom, right?
It's just the bottom, yeah. And do that a few times. If you're making a plate or a wide bowl or something with a really big opening, if you have more surface area, you want to do this forever. Not forever, but you know, a long time, because plates warp really easily, they crack really easily, and it's because it's such a wide plane of space for the clay to, like, you know, go, I don't know, for it to crack. I don't know the science behind it, but it happens. So just condense the clay a lot. If you're doing something this size, maybe 4 or 5 times back and forth is enough. Okay.
When you were shaping it, you weren't getting your hands wet, right? You were doing it dry? Or are you supposed to?
When I was shaping it?
When you were pulling it out.
Oh, yep. I had water, yeah.
It is what, okay.
Yep. So you need water pretty much the whole time through. If you don't, there will be too much friction, and it's going to cause it to tear or go off center, and you'll feel when you need more water.
Okay, so keep your hands wet.
Yep. The trick, especially when you use a clay that's not as gritty, is to not use too much water, because then the clay will get oversaturated and really weak and floppy, and then it'll just collapse. It'll be like, and it's really disappointing. So the grog here is really helping you out, because you can really load it up with water and it'll be okay for a while. If this was porcelain, no freaking way. A lot of people throw dry with porcelain because of, I don't know, they can like create extravagant shapes with no water. Okay, so once we have that open, we are going to practice pulling up the walls. So, how do I explain this? So, basically, this is a balance of pressure. So I need some sort of structure on the inside. So that's my finger. I kind of switch it up. I usually end up using my middle finger on the inside. And then, like I did before with the sponge, I hold it like this, and then I pinch it so there's like a little piece here. It needs to be wet. Get the wall wet. And then I start at the bottom of the wheel. So I'm touching the wheel right now. And you'll notice that my hands are connected. I'm not doing this, they're connected. And that is because your hands need to move up as a unit. A lot of times what happens is maybe like this hand will move up, but then this hand is like doing something totally different. And if you don't have the balanced pressure on each side of the clay, it's gonna like...
I can see this part being really hard.
Right.
I can.
Maybe this is the harder part for you. Maybe not. But you're just gonna take the sponge at the very base of the wheel and create a little bit of a ledge here. Very minor, nothing too dramatic. So I'm gonna create a little ledge, and then as a unit, my hands are gonna move together and they're gonna lift that ledge up. Did you see how a little bit of clay came off? Mm-hmm. That's okay. It happens. Don't worry about it. At the top of every pull, so that's what we call that, a pull up, we condense the rim. And my favorite way to explain this is to shush the chicken. That's how I learned, and it has never left me, and I don't know, kids like it. So you shush the chicken, and you just create a nice even rim on top.
So you just take your fingers and
You just shh.
shush it.
Yes, exactly. So the reason we do that is because as we keep on pulling and pulling and pulling, if you don't condense the rim, it'll kind of get away from you and it'll become like uneven and, you know, thinner and not very strong. So it's just a good habit to get into. So we're gonna do the same thing. Start at the very bottom, create a little ledge, and then as a unit, drag the whole thing up. All right, we're gonna do that a couple times. Depending on what you're making, how much clay you're throwing with, the shape that you're doing, etc.,
You didn't shush
etc.
you didn't shush
No,
the
I
chicken.
didn't. Thank you. Yeah,
She's not gonna let
That
you get
chicken's
away with
screaming.
anything.
I definitely skip a lot of these steps. So if you watch me throw like on my own, this is not what I do. But this is how I started. So that's just, I don't know, it's the only way I know how to teach people, the way that I learned. As you get better, you can skip steps and combine steps and like, you know, create
Yeah, see, she
your
is
own
going down.
way.
She's not shushing it.
Yeah.
It's doing something else to the chicken.
All right. And so another thing you want to be aware of as you're making or you're pulling up the walls is the thickness of the wall in all parts of it. So did you notice how as I was pulling, I was moving at a very consistent speed, very slow speed? If I was to go, here, I'll show you. If I was like, I'm gonna move really slow here, and that's good, and then I'm gonna like speed up. It's gonna get off center, and then parts of it are gonna be thinner than other parts, right? So it's important to be very consistent with the speed you're moving from the very bottom to the very top, and don't rush it.
So what about the speed of the wheel for this whole thing?
Right. So for
Like
pulling
when
up the walls, you want to go about medium speed.
And what about when you stuck your thumb in there and started going out?
The best way I can describe it is, okay, so we're slowly decreasing the speed. So when we're centering, it's 4 out of 4. When we're opening it up, maybe 3/4.
Okay.
And then during pulling up the walls, half speed. But that can change. So like if you're throwing something really tall and like skinny, then you're gonna be going really slow. So like if this was more clay, I'm going this speed now, but as I pull the piece up, I'm gonna be slowing down as I get taller and taller.
Your hands and the wheel, or just your hands?
Both.
Both. Okay.
So the speed that your hands move at depends on the speed of the wheel, and that is totally intuitive. Most of this process is intuitive. Like I can only explain so much. Most of it is just like you feel it and you know. So it's trial and error. Unfortunately, there's not like numbers or like speeds like, you know, miles per hour or something like that. It's just kind of feeling it out. So notice I'm trying to get all of the clay I can off the bottom, like the bottom corner. And pulling it back up. All right. And you can kind of feel the thickness of the clay by like gauging between your two fingers. So like I can feel that thickness and I can feel this thickness, and they're pretty much even.
And what if they're not? What if the bottom is not? What if the bottom is thicker? Because I could see that
Mhm.
that's probably
That
the
happens a
norm.
lot. Yep.
So if the bottom's thicker, how can you repair that without messing the whole thing up?
So if the bottom's really thick, just keep on pulling the bottom clay up. You know what I mean?
And then when you like reach the point where it's not, you just kind of release your pressure and still come all the way up. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah, to
Um,
kind of like move it up and, you know what I mean? Like,
And if you can't, if that's not working for you, you can trim the clay off with this tool. Give it an undercut. So like, let's say I had a whole bunch of clay here, I could just like, I don't know, just like cut it off. That's kind of cheating. And then you're kind of wasting clay.
Yeah, I was thinking
But-
like more in this area, having it. I could see it being
Mhm.
thicker there, like not getting,
Right.
not getting. It's almost like with the thumb, you didn't come out far enough the first time. Do you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yep. So that has everything to do with like aesthetics, first of all. So if you have a specific idea for a shape, you want to open up the foot to prepare you for that shape you're gonna make.
Okay.
But so you're asking like how to pull more of this up?
Well, no,
Or-
I guess I could see even just from that silly little thing there
Mhm.
that I'd be really thick right here and
Yeah.
then really thin up there.
I think the trick to that is just pulling, like starting at the very bottom and pulling up as much as you can. Also, on top of that,
Practice.
right. On top of that, we trim afterwards. And if you have too much clay on the bottom or on the sides, you know, that's what these tools are for. And you
Okay.
can carve all of that away and create a really like elegant, cool foot. So you can utilize extra clay if it's there. But I'd say it's best to try and move as much clay as you can up the wall, because then you'll get more height and you're using that clay as opposed to just carving it off at some point. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. But that being said, when we think we're done with something, I always say that it's good to create a little undercut to get rid of as much of the unwanted clay as possible. So take this tool and you just kind of carve in. This is this is kind of like a scary thing, but you'll all figure it out, I promise. You might mess up a few times, but it's a lot easier than it looks. So you like make this cut in here, and then you just kind of catch it all and like pull it away. And then you can do that a few times. So that, and then you can like, shape it a little bit more. Finish it up. Maybe you want to get really fancy, and this is my favorite tool. And smooth it out with this rubber rib tool. You definitely don't have to do all of this. I'm just showing you what you can do. Most of these will probably be glazed, so like all of these little like imperfections and lines will be covered, unless you choose to not glaze that part. And then they won't be, but yeah, so let's say we're done. We have cylinder, we have our board ready. To get these off the wheel, you kind of create, so now we're gonna cup some water and create a little bit of a puddle from the piece to the end of the wheel. Good old snail trail, because we're gonna take our wire tool, and for anyone who hasn't used a wire tool before, you always want it to be pulled really tight, not to the point where you're gonna like hurt yourself, but really tight. And then to wire something off the wheel, 2 fingers down and pull towards you, just flat underneath. That does not always happen, what just happened. Like it kind of pulled with me.
Was that good or bad?
It doesn't really matter, but it's not good or bad. But if that stays where it is, put more water and then just underwire it again. And you should be able to, so like let's say it's still there, you could slide it off that water trail that you left. And then to get it off the wheel, I kind of keep my hands right on the edge, balance it.
What a bummer it must be to get that far and then not get it off the wheel right.
Oh yeah, and
Or
that
drop it.
that
Imagine that.
happens. And then just place it right there.